There's a call comes ringing o'er the restless way. Send the light, send the light. There are souls to rescue, there are souls to save. Send the light, send the light, send the light. The blessed gospel light, let it shine from shore to shore. Send the light, the blessed gospel light, let it shine forevermore. Let us pray that grace may everywhere abound. Send the light, send the light, and the Christ-like Spirit everywhere be found. Send the light, send the light, send the light, the blessed gospel light, let it shine from shore to shore. Send the light, the blessed gospel light, let it shine forevermore. Let us not grow weary in the work of love. Send the light, send the light. Let us gather jewels for a crown above. Send the light, send the light, send the light, the blessed gospel light, let it shine from shore to shore. Send the light, the blessed gospel light, let it shine forevermore. Maybe say.
Good evening to each and every one of you. It's good to have our group back from camp. Anytime anybody's missing, we always miss that one. It's great to have them back. I do appreciate Nick recovering my fumble this morning with Miranda. I certainly didn't intentionally leave her out. Lots of times you're up in front of a crowd and your mind just goes blank. You can't think of everybody you need to think of. I even inadvertently left out Joey. I've spoken to Joey twice this past week, and he hasn't been called back into work, and he is at his parents' right now, attending with them there at Amory. If you can call Joey and talk to him, he would appreciate that, because he's just there at home, and his mind's just wandering, all right? And he says he knows there's lots of prayers going up for him here at Skyline, and he loves us dearly, but he's got a big future as far as what's fixing to happen to him. The court hasn't met yet, and so he just doesn't know when this thing's gonna come up, and of course he doesn't know what's gonna happen. So a lot of us think, and we was talking about this, I think it was Charlie or somebody, I forget who I was talking to. No, it was Jake. We think we might have a bad day. I mean, the day could get a lot worse, all right? So when we're down because of a big toe hurting or something like that, think of that bad day that you could have. And maybe it will jog you back to reality and get you back on the right track. So, all right, continuing this morning, I'll back up just a little bit here and go back to Jeremiah 3:15, where God says, "And I will give you shepherds according to my heart, who will feed you with knowledge and understanding. I will give you individuals with my heart, men with my heart, who will feed you. Who will feed you. God would provide a shepherd's heart, so to speak, that he has. A person who has the care for you, or desire to care for you, who loves you, who wants to protect you, who desires to admonish you and keep you on the right track. And as I said this morning, the Old Testament anticipates the coming of that great shepherd, which would be Jesus Christ there in John. So we have to understand that this selection of leadership demands our patience, all right? Our thoughtful preponderance, and of course our prayers. Consider the New Testament even in Acts 14:23. Let's turn there together. Acts 14:23. 14:23. This is when they were considering the appointment of elders, and 14:23 says, and when they had appointed elders for them in every church. Now, what did they do before? It says, having prayed with fasting, they commended them to the Lord in whom they had believed. So these prayers also included fasting. Now, you don't hear a lot in the church today about fasting. Maybe we should, because it's certainly a scriptural topic. All right, spending time in prayer for God's guidance rather than spending an hour on a meal or whatever we might spend. Maybe putting our stomach where our heart is, if you will, so to speak. Or skipping food and trying to rid your mind of worldly things and center on prayer, all right? Don't worry about what you're going to have for breakfast, lunch, or supper. Put that out of your mind and devote yourself to prayer. You see, this is the fasting part of it. And so, the New Testament is certainly we see there the example of fasting in regards to the appointment of elders. It's a very serious matter, folks. It's even more serious from my point and Joyce's standpoint is because we have actually seen a whole church of God's people, all right, led into apostasy because of the eldership. I'm not talking about churches back in the 2nd century and 3rd century, which we will get to on Wednesday night, where the eldership allowed those churches to move into apostasy. And those particular churches, all right, that's where the rise of the Roman Catholic Church faith came from, was because of the apostasy of the elders there in the 2nd and 3rd century. But Joyce and I have actually seen, we have actually visited with, before it moved into apostasy, a church with a couple of 100 to 250 members, where the eldership took that church into apostasy. No wonder in 1 Timothy 5:22, Paul tells Timothy, do not lay hands upon someone too hastily, and thus share in the responsibility for the sin of others. You ordain an elder who's not qualified to be an elder, and you do it in a hastily manner where you don't consider the qualifications or anything to it. That particular person may wind up making the wrong decisions or may carry the church into apostasy with what he thinks. Then Paul says, that would be partly your fault that you allowed this to happen, because you allowed that person to go into the eldership unqualified because you made too hasty a decision. Naturally, when a congregation considers the eldership, 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1, those qualifications given there by Paul to preachers, okay? The qualifications of these men They weren't given to churches as a whole. The qualifications here are given to 2 preachers, all right? And said, these are the qualifications. Make sure men are installed within these congregations in accordance with these qualifications. And so it's necessary that we consider those. However, as we consider those qualifications, let's not run the risk of failing to understand the underpinnings of these qualifications in regards to leadership, as Jesus has defined such. Now, if you'll remember, the Jews expected Jesus to lead a coup, all right, to overthrow the existing Roman government there and those other Jewish leaders. And they thought, Jesus' followers thought, that, they would become the unchallenged leaders of the Jewish nation at that time. All right, some of the apostles, I think, could probably already visualize themselves wearing these big robes, prancing around, thinking of themselves as someone important, so to speak. They probably anticipated servants to care for them, and probably wanted their names known everywhere, all right? These visions of grandeur, all right, put them in constant competition with each other. And we see it within the New Testament. All of them wanted these leadership positions. They wanted to be top dog. Each one of them did. And they were constantly looking at each other about this. They wanted that exalted position. Now, in Matthew 23:11 and 12, this is what Jesus says about the leadership. But the greatest among you shall be your servant. And whoever exalts himself shall be humbled, and whoever humbles himself shall be exalted. Now that's Jesus' idea. That's the teaching, so to speak, that Jesus has set forth. However, consider the prevailing thought there of the apostles. One of them's in Mark 9:33-35. Mark 9:33-35 says, and they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he began to question them, what were you discussing on the way? But they kept silent, for on the way they had discussed which one of them was the greatest. Wow. We're not going to tell him. We're not going to tell him what we were discussing. Really, we'll just keep that among ourselves. What about Luke 22:24? And there also arose a discussion among themselves, which one of them was regarded as the greatest. As the greatest. This is a far cry from Jesus' idea as far as leadership or greatness. And then in Matthew 20:20, then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came to him with her sons, bowing down and making a request of him. And he said to her, what do you wish? She said to him, command that in your kingdom these 2 sons of mine may sit, one on your right and one on your left. Basically, she's saying, hey, exalt my sons to your right and left. Let them be the greater. Let them be the greater. Anything, that's what a mother would do, of course. But Jesus says, you don't know what you're asking for. And look there in 24. And hearing this, the other 10, which would include Peter, all right, the other 10 became indignant at the brothers. Now, coming on the heels of this request, look there in Matthew 20:25. But Jesus called them to himself and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great men exercise authority over them. Now remember, this is what the 12 apostles were actually looking to get. The Bible certainly indicates that the apostles wanted the ability to lord it over others. They wanted that high exalted position. Jesus says, no, that's not the way this works. Look there in 26. It is not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you shall be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you shall be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. I bet you this busted their bubble. No doubt it did. But I wonder whether they were even listening to what he said. Because the disciples' perception of this, of a great leader, probably came from the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees and the Sadducees. But that perception was upside down to what God actually wanted. Within the church, great leaders are not measured by how others serve them. Great leaders are measured by how they serve others. And that's what Christ was trying to get across to the apostles. And he kept talking about it and talking about it. But obviously nothing was sinking in, because if you go to John 13, on the night that he was betrayed, at the Last Supper, quote unquote, there's a issue there regarding washing of the feet, all right? And none of the apostles wanted to stoop so low as to wash the others' feet, because from their standpoint, each one of them was still in the running for the one being exalted. And they didn't want to get out on the floor and wash somebody else's feet, because that's basically a slave's job. That's basically one who is low down on the totem pole. And so none of the 12 would make a movement towards washing anybody's feet, because they still had that idea, delusions of grandeur. That's what they kept thinking about. Now, without question, Jesus was the greatest in the room. Rabbi even, all right? In no way would the Jewish society allow the rabbi to wash the feet of the people in the room. But this is what Jesus did. And individuals think of this as a foot washing process. It has nothing to do with that at all. It's service to others. Jesus giving us an example that as a servant, the greatest in the room, Jesus would lower himself and wash someone else's feet. And believe me, these feet got dirty. Flip-flops, we'd call them. Dirty, you know how dirty it is, and I hate to get dirt up under. You know how that is. And all of these things, I mean, terrible, terrible. You're going to wash the feet? Wow, what a teaching moment there. The greatness of Jesus there was measured by his humble and unselfish service to his apostles. This is brought out by Paul over in Philippians. Philippians 2, verses 5 to 9. Paul says, "Have this attitude in yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, although he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant, and being made in the likeness of men. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Therefore also God highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name which is above every name. Yes, we want men who meet the qualifications as set forth in 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1. But underpinning those qualifications will be men with a servant heart that God has given them and are willing to serve and not be exalted, willing to assist a congregation in the deepest agony or trials, and not willing to think of themselves with delusions of grandeur. We seek leaders, pastors, elders, bishops, shepherds, servants who are humble enough to serve others, to obey Jesus, and to glorify God. May God bless our efforts here at Skyline as we work to honor him and serve him, and as we move forward within our elder selection process. This afternoon, if you have not obeyed God, if you had not put Christ on in baptism, so to speak, have not been clothed with God in baptism, we can assist with that this morning, and you can be added to God's church. Or if you've wandered away, we would love to have you back. God would love to have you back in his fold. For any reason we can assist you, let it be made known. Now while we stand and sing.